11 WNBA records in a single game.
Not a season, not a career, not a decade, one single, unforgettable night of basketball.
Caitlin Clark got 8 of them. Kelsey Mitchell got 1. Sophie Cunningham got 1. And Tyasha Harris got 1.
We are breaking down every single record, what it means for this team, and how a squad that lost to Paige Bueckers in Dallas on opening night just torched the record book against that same Wings squad months later. Stick around because by the end of this video, we'll reveal what one of Caitlin's teammates said about her that melted everyone's hearts and changes everything for the playoff push. Who do you think is the face of the league, Caitlin or Paige?
Let me know down in the comments below. Picture this.
Caitlin Clark limping toward the tunnel, grabbing at her ankle, and 17,000 people in Gainbridge Fieldhouse going dead silent all at once. Nobody knows yet how bad it is. Nobody knows if she's coming back out. All anyone can see is the best player in the world walking off the floor before halftime. And that image alone is enough to make the whole building hold its breath.
Here's why this game already had weight before Clark went down. Dallas beat Indiana on opening night this season.
That's not some random early season loss you forget about, that's the Wings walking into Indiana and taking one right at the start of the year. And it stuck with everybody, players and fans included. So, when these two teams lined up again on August 14th, this wasn't just another game on the schedule. It was Indiana getting a shot to fix something. And early on, it looked like it might not go their way again.
The second quarter opens tense.
Dallas is hanging around, hitting shots, playing like a team that knows it's already beaten this Fever squad once.
Nobody in the building is sure this turns into a blowout.
If anything, it feels like it could turn into another gut punch. Then, right before halftime, Clark goes down. She grabs her ankle, favors it walking, and heads straight to the locker room instead of the bench. The broadcast starts throwing out theories immediately.
Is it a roll? A sprain? Something worse?
And nobody has a real answer because the Fever aren't saying anything yet.
The mood on the bench shifts fast. Teammates are glancing over at the tunnel between plays.
Coaches are talking low, and the energy in the crowd goes from nervous to worried. This is a team that already knows what life looks like without Clark on the floor.
And Dallas has already proven they can take advantage of it.
So, the uncertainty isn't just about one ankle.
It's about whether the rest of this game,
and maybe more games after it, just got a lot harder. Then the third quarter starts and Clark walks back out like nothing happened.
She's not testing it with a jumper from the elbow or easing in with a safe possession. She grabs the ball and attacks the rim almost immediately. And Aaliyah Boston finds her for an early score that gets the building back on its feet.
She's moving fine, cutting fine, and pushing the pace like the ankle scare is already forgotten.
Which brings up the obvious question. Is this smart? She just left the floor with an injury against a team that beat Indiana once already.
And instead of sitting the rest of the half to be safe, she comes out firing in the third.
That's either the kind of decision that wins you a game or the kind that costs you weeks. And for a few possessions, you can feel that tension in the building. Everyone watching a little too closely every time she plants on that foot.
Then it stops being a question because Clark puts up 17 points in that third quarter alone, going 7 for 9 from the field, and the game tilts completely. The Fever bench goes from nervous to loud. Dallas's lead disappears, and the whole tone of the game flips in about 10 minutes of basketball. And that quarter wasn't just Clark getting hot. It was the spark for a full night where Indiana didn't just win, they rewrote the record book. No guard has ever touched 39.8 points produced per game.
That's Clark's season pace once you combine her scoring and her assists.
And it sounds made up, like a typo somebody forgot to fix. Nobody in WNBA history has ever averaged anything close to that over a full season, guard or otherwise.
Not Diana Taurasi, not Sue Bird, not Maya Moore in her prime. This isn't a hot streak we're talking about, it's her actual season pace sitting at 21.7 points and 8.2 assists a night.
And Dallas just handed her more fuel for that fire. Look at the line from the Dallas game itself.
Clark finishes with 29 points and 10 assists.
And that single stat line is exactly the kind of night that feeds a 39.8 pace. Score 29, assist on 10 more, and you're looking at a guard directly responsible for 39 points in one game alone.
Do that over and over across a season and you get a number that breaks the format WNBA box scores were built to measure. Now, here's where it gets interesting.
Because scoring 29 in a night is one thing, but doing it consistently enough to rack up 25-point games as a point guard is another thing completely. Clark now holds the record for most 25-point games by a point guard in WNBA history. Point guards are supposed to set up the offense, get everybody else involved, and chip in points when needed. Clark flips the job description, scoring at a clip you'd expect from a shooting guard while still running the whole show. She also picked up her 20th career game with 20 points and 10 assists in that same outing against Dallas.
No other player in WNBA history has more than 10 of those games total in an entire career.
Clark already has double that, and she's done it in 83 games.
That's not a gap. That's an entire different tier of production nobody else in the league has sniffed. But that's not all.
She's got 13 career games with 25 points and 10 assists combined, and 7 of those happened this season alone. Sabrina Ionescu, who's one of the best guards in the league, has 6 of those games in her entire career.
Clark passed the total in a single season and she's still got games left to add to it.
Then there's the assist record that sounds almost unfair once you hear the number. Clark is the fastest player in WNBA or NBA history to reach 700 career assists, getting there in just 83 games. And it's not a one-time fluke because she's also the fastest to 200, 300, 400, 500, and 600 assists. Every single checkpoint along the way, she got there faster than anyone who's ever played pro basketball, men included. She's also sitting at 30 double-doubles in 83 games, which puts her third all-time among guards in WNBA history. Guards who've played a decade barely reached that number. And Clark's done it in a career that's barely 3 seasons long, one of which she played just 13 games in because of injury. Add it all up and Clark is on pace to be the first player in WNBA history to average 20 points and 8 assists across a full season. She already has 30 games in her career hitting that combined mark, more than anyone else. While Diana Taurasi and Skylar Diggins sit at 23 each for their entire careers, none of this needs extra spin or hype to sound impressive. It's just what's sitting right there in the box score night after night, game after game, 18 straight games scoring 20 or more points. That's Kelsey Mitchell's number, and it's a WNBA single-season record. Think about that for a second. 18 games in a row. No cold nights, no off-shooting stretches, just bucket after bucket for over a month and a half of basketball. And it happened while Clark was dealing with her own stuff, ankle scares and all. Which means Mitchell wasn't just adding to the scoring, she was the one holding the offense together on nights the Fever needed her most. Against Dallas, that's exactly what happened again. Clark went down before half, and Indiana needed someone to keep the pace up while she was in the locker room getting looked at. Mitchell answered that call, scoring in bunches through the first half and making sure Dallas couldn't build any real cushion. When Clark came back out in the third quarter and took over, Mitchell didn't disappear either. She kept getting to her spots and knocking down shots, giving Indiana 2 scorers Dallas had to account for on every single possession. That's what makes an 18-game streak so hard to wrap your head around. Teams scout you, defenses adjust, opponents throw different coverages at you every single night trying to slow you down. Mitchell kept scoring 20 anyway, game after game against every kind of defense the league could throw at her. That's not luck. That's a scorer who's figured out how to get her shot off no matter who's guarding her or what the game plan is designed to stop. Now, let's talk about Sophie Cunningham because her record comes from a much rougher place. Earlier this season, Cunningham became the center of attention after the Dejounte Carrington incident, the one where Caitlin Clark took a shot to the eye that turned into a league-wide conversation about physicality and protection. Cunningham didn't stay quiet about it, and that made her a target. The player opposing crowds booed the loudest, and the one clips got cut around for weeks after. Instead of shrinking from that attention, Cunningham turned it into the best shooting season of her career. She's hitting 45.5% from 3 this season, and that's on at least 100 attempts, which makes it the best three-point percentage in the entire WNBA. Not just on the Fever, not just among role players. The best mark in the whole league. That's not a small sample size fluke either. 100 attempts is enough volume to prove this is real, repeatable shooting, not a hot week that evens out over time.
That number means something bigger than just a shooting percentage on a stat sheet.
Cunningham took a moment that turned her into a villain in road arenas and answered it by becoming the most efficient three-point shooter in the league. Every catch-and-shoot three she buries now carries a little bit of that story with it, the player everybody wanted to boo turning into the player defenses can't leave open, not even for a second. Put Mitchell's streak and Cunningham's shooting title next to each other, and you've got two records that don't get the headlines Clark's numbers get, but they carry just as much weight. On August 14, Mitchell kept the offense alive while Clark was hurt. And Cunningham spaced the floor so well that Dallas couldn't load up on anybody without paying for it from outside.
Both of them are proof. This Fever team isn't a one-player show.
When the game demanded somebody else step up, two different players answered in two completely different ways. And the record book now has their names in it right next to Clark's.
5 for 5 from three-point range.
Perfect night, 0 misses. And it happened from a player who hadn't even made a single field goal in her previous 6 games combined. That's what makes Tyasha Harris's performance so hard to explain away as some lucky shooting night. She'd scored a total of 3 points across her last 6 outings before this game. And then out of nowhere, she goes perfect from deep against Dallas on the exact night Indiana needed every bucket it could find. Harris isn't a name casual fans know walking into this season. She's the backup point guard, the one who plays when Clark needs a blow or when the Fever want a different look running the offense. But on August 14, she shot better than every single player on that floor, Fever or Wings, and it wasn't close. 5 attempts from 3, 5 makes, and a career high in threes made in one game. Most of that damage landed in the fourth quarter, which is exactly when Indiana needed it most. She hit 4 of her 5 threes in that final frame alone. And the Fever outscored Dallas 35-21 in the fourth to shut the door on any comeback attempt. That's not garbage time production. That's a bench guard hitting shots with the game still very much needing to be sealed. Watching her and Clark work together in that stretch, you could tell this wasn't the first time they'd run these sets.
Clark finds Harris in rhythm, off screens, in transition.
Wherever the defense leaves a crack, and Harris just keeps letting it fly with the same confidence every single time.
That kind of chemistry doesn't show up overnight.
It's built in practice reps and bench conversations, and it showed up exactly when Indiana needed someone besides Clark and Mitchell to beat Dallas. Clark talked about Harris after the game, and it wasn't just about the shooting. Clark said, "Tay's probably one of the best teammates I've had. Like, she's always there supporting everybody, like uplifting everybody. So, it's really fun to see her kind of like come into her own and thrive. And whether she plays 2 minutes or she plays 20 minutes, she's the same person in the locker room and shows up and works every single day." Clark also pointed out how the crowd reacted, since Harris is actually from Indiana, saying, "I love those moments and to see everybody celebrate her obviously from being from this state.
Like, it's pretty cool for her to be here." Harris answered that respect right back. She said, "I'm in awe watching CC play. Sometimes it's like it's normal and it's not. So, it's just great to be on her side officially." She also talked about the mindset that got her through the slump, saying, "I'm a vet. You got to stay ready whenever your number is called, and my number was called today, and I went perfect, so felt great." Stephanie White connected all of this back to how Clark runs the team in general. White called her a maestro, saying, "The way that she really runs our offense, I think when we're at our best, she is instructing. She is running it much like a show. It's a tough matchup with us when she's commanding the floor like that." White also gave Harris credit directly, saying she has the utmost confidence in Tay and that on the days Harris feels good, you can tell how she's going to impact us. That kind of trust between a starter and a bench guard doesn't show up in a box score, but it's exactly what separates teams that win in the regular season from teams built for a real playoff push. Harris's 5 threes proved this record-breaking night wasn't just Clark's show, it was Indiana's whole roster clicking from the starters down to the guard who hadn't scored in weeks. What happens when Clark and Mitchell go quiet for a stretch and Dallas smells an opening?
That's when you find out if a team actually has depth or if it just has 2 stars and a bunch of players hoping to survive.
Indiana had an answer sitting right there in the paint. And her name doesn't show up next to any of those 11 records. Aaliyah Boston isn't chasing 3-point titles or assist checkpoints.
She shows up every single night and does the same job down low. Rebounding, finishing around the rim, and giving Indiana a post presence Dallas simply doesn't have an answer for. Against the Wings, Boston puts up a double-double with 16 points and 10 rebounds. And 10 of those points come in the fourth quarter alone, exactly when Indiana needs to put the game away for good.
When the outside shots aren't falling early, Boston's the one scoring inside and grabbing extra possessions on the offensive glass. And that interior presence gives Indiana a kind of balance Dallas can't match no matter what they throw at Clark and Mitchell on the perimeter. Even on nights when the big three of Clark, Mitchell, and Boston isn't firing on all cylinders, that trio is still almost impossible to contain because you can't load up on one of them without opening a lane for the other two. Boston's the steady piece in that group, the one who doesn't need a hot shooting night to make her presence felt because rebounds and paint touches show up regardless of how the jumpers are falling. Then there's Michaela Timpson, who's stepping into a starting role and showing exactly why the coaching staff trusts her out there. She's not putting up big numbers yet, but her energy shows up in loose balls, in extra effort on the boards, and in the kind of hustle plays that don't always land in the box score but change the pace of a game. For a team thinking past just this season, that kind of production matters because you can't win a playoff series with only 3 or 4 scorers carrying the whole load every night. Now, let's get into the storyline that's been building since long before either of these two ever got paid to play basketball. Clark versus Paige goes back to high school, back when both of them were already being talked about as the next big thing in the sport. Years before Indiana ever drafted Clark or Dallas ever landed Paige. That history is exactly why this rivalry works as well as it does. There's no manufactured beef here, no forced storyline cooked up for TV. It's just two of the best players alive going at each other, possession after possession, letting the actual basketball do the talking. And Paige proves she's no side character in this one. She finishes with 29 points, matching Clark's total, plus 6 rebounds and 6 assists, forcing Indiana to adjust defensively in the fourth quarter just to slow her down. Every time these two share a court, you get reminded that Paige isn't just Clark's foil. She's a real threat capable of matching her scoring on any given night, which makes the promotional poster for this game even stranger. Instead of putting Clark, Boston, or Mitchell front and center, the image used for this matchup features Lexi Hull and Raven Johnson, two players who weren't even the story of the night. Fans noticed immediately, and the poster became its own conversation completely separate from the basketball being played on the floor. It's a strange footnote to a night that had this much history and this much talent on display. Between Boston and Timpson holding down the front court and Clark and Paige picking up right where high school left off, this Fever season is going to get remembered for storylines that never once needed a marketing team's help. 11 records in one night doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a hurt superstar walked back out in the third quarter instead of sitting, and 3 teammates decided to match her energy instead of coasting. Mitchell kept scoring, Cunningham kept shooting, Harris went perfect, and Clark just kept doing what she's done all season. If this is the pace with Clark still working around injuries, a fully healthy Fever team walking into the playoffs is a real problem for the rest of the league. Keep watching because this team is making history every single time they step on the floor.